This is a webinar on how to be a board member. I'm Sam Laprade. So happy to be with you. So proud to be part of this organization, and you're going to get a lot out of tonight, so buckle in. We've got some great guests for you today, and to learn more about the Capacity Building Institute, I'm going to call on my friend, Rob Barnes. Hi, Rob.
Hi, Sam, and good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to have you here tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. I am going to give you a quick presentation on what it is we do at Capacity Building Institute, who we are, and what's our mission, and what's our mandate, and why are we all here together. So let me start it up. Now, Capacity Building Institute is a relatively new organization. And what you're joining tonight is something called the Capacity Series, which is a monthly series of webinars on a variety of subjects, but really two overarching themes: how to be a board member and how to be an executive director. And we exist to help train environmental leaders, you know, folks who are appearing on boards, or volunteers, or fundraisers, or executive directors, or senior managers, people at all levels of their careers looking to make a difference for the environment and looking to get some training. So we offer that training in a variety of different ways. So we really want to bolster Canada's environmental sector, and our overall mission is to train 10,000 environmental leaders by 2030. And even though we're relatively young, we're well on our way. And what you're participating in tonight is really part of that. It's really one of the big outreach vehicles of Capacity Building Institute, this webinar series. And check out our YouTube page if you missed previous ones and you want to catch up on these Capacity Series webinars. Well, a lot of good reasons. You know, there's a bunch of big problems out there on the environmental front: climate change, nature loss, species decline. And really what we want to do is help make the Canadian environmental community equal to its vital task. And it is a very vital task. And we want to give you all the help that we can. I think that Canada's environment deserves all the help it can get, that environmental nonprofits play a vital role, that training really, really matters and can really boost an organization's effectiveness. And we really tailor a lot of our work to what we call small shop environment. So usually at or below about $500,000 in annual revenues. These groups can really make a big difference. You know, they're really kind of plugged into the grassroots, the needs of their communities, and they can really kind of make things happen. And finally, that there's a lot more to do, right? We can build a stronger and more resilient sector if we have the courage and the patience and the tenacity to follow through. So what do we offer? As I said at the front end, we offer training, and it appears in a variety of different programs. Perhaps tonight we're talking about Capacity Series, but perhaps most saliently, I would say that we've got this, our flagship program called the Capacity Building Certificate Program, which we're recruiting for. And so there's a little bit at the end about that program. We have a bunch of trainers. You might recognize some of them from the call tonight. Sam is a certified fundraising executive and knows her way around budgets and fundraising and board dynamics and a lot more. And Alex, who's on the call tonight, is a communications expert, really amazing at thinking through how do we talk and how do we engage as organizations. You know, we have already a few years of training under our belt. We've trained organizations like Algonquin Adirondacks, which is a fantastic organization in Ontario and New York State. We've trained a whole bunch of interns who are taking placements in organizations all over the country. And this is Hannah from Sea Change Canada, working on oceans issues. And this is, of course, the Capacity Series webinars, and we encourage you to check out future webinars if tonight's one is of interest, and there'll be more information on how to plug in to those. As I said, we have a YouTube page with a bunch of pre-recorded videos. And we want to give a shout out to our amazing managers who are helping make this year a success. We've got a bunch of mentors who are helping interns find their place and understand the dynamics of nonprofits in various areas. And of course, we want to thank our board and our partners, and we've got one of them tonight, which is Goodlawyer. I'm going to make a presentation. And, you know, as I said, check out future events. Here are the dates, and we'd love to hear from you in terms of ideas for this Capacity Series webinar. We're always looking for great ideas. And then finally, if I may, I'm going to pitch you and say, hey, we are looking for folks who want to take part in our capacity building certificate program. It's our flagship training program, runs from July to December. If you're a nonprofit leader and you're looking to enhance the effectiveness and capacity of your organization, please get in touch. We've got a URL there, and I'll put my email in the chat as well, so you can get a hold of me directly. Thank you very much, and back to you, Sam.
Thanks so much, Rob. I appreciate that. I always learn something from you, Rob, every time, even though I've seen that a few times, always learn something. Thank you so much. Today is all about how to be a board member. And this is such an important topic. I think a lot of people sort of say, I'm going to join a board, and really don't know what they're in for. And a lot of organizations at the same time, don't know what to expect from their board members. So today we're going to walk through a lot of the inner workings of a board and how to be the best board member you can be. We are so blessed to be joined by three incredible people tonight. And we have Alex Keenan with us. Hi, Alex. Great to join you here, Alex. There she is, the one and the only. Chris White is joining us. Hi, Chris. There he is. Hi, Chris. And of course, Rena Upitis. Hi, Rena. Are you with us?
Believe it or not, I am.
I'm so excited.
No problem. Dr. Google solved it all.
I tell you, well, what would it be without some technology challenges, right? But we're all here, which is the main thing. And we've got a really great opportunity today to kind of dig in deep into some of these issues. And I'd love to take a minute to sort of get to know each and every one of you. And, this is an opportunity to learn about your experiences with board. And really, I think you only get experience with the board if you've been through everything there is to be with a board, right? And it's good, bad, and ugly. There's some good stuff that we can learn today, but really enhancing that relationship with boards really is an important part of any nonprofit, right? So Alex, it's a pleasure to have you here, of course, today. President of Ontario Environment Network. Tell me the best thing about your job, Alex.
Oh, my role with OEN. The best thing, I think it's getting to work with really amazing people. The board that we have, we're fairly new. We were just elected back in November, and everyone cares what they're doing. They have great ideas. They have a lot of creativity in the way that they bring those ideas to life. And I think that's really what it is. We are on the same page about the world we're trying to create. And so getting together, usually on Zoom, with that group is always, it's a joy to talk to them.
That's amazing. It's a joy to have you here, Alex. Thank you so much.
You.
And Chris White, great to have you here, Board Chair, Nova Scotia Environmental Network. It's great to have you on the call tonight, Chris.
Very happy to be here, my first time.
And Chris, let me ask you, what's the biggest lesson you've learned from working with boards?
I would say the biggest lesson has been the importance of having staff to do a lot of the day-to-day work that you don't want you to have to rely on your board for. Mm-hmm. I didn't have staff for the first 2 years in this position, and the last 2 years I have had staff, and it's been like night and day.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Chris. And Rena Upitis joining us again, founding president of Wintergreen Studios. Rena, I'm still processing stuff we talked about last time. You brought so much to our team. Really appreciate it being back again. And what do you think the biggest sort of barrier to having a great relationship with your board is?
Oh, you saved the toughest question for that. Like anything I'm going to say in life, communication and transparency. It's not about skill. It's not about commitment. It's not about money. It's not about what you volunteer to do or not do. It's not even whether you read the damn agenda. It's really about whether the people on the board trust each other enough to communicate openly. And, quick story, we hired a wonderful executive director, and I came with the recommendation to the board. And I said, this is who I want to hire. And one of the board members says, will she say no to you? And I said, oh yeah, she says no to me all the time. Good, hire her. It was said in jest, but I think that is, I would say, of all things, it's communication, whether it's a board relationship or a marriage.
Absolutely. There you go. Well, I think from the three of you, I've already learned enough tonight. So we'll say goodbye. Just kidding. We're not saying goodbye, just joking. It's great to have everybody here. And already you can see the wisdom we're going to learn tonight. We're going to take this opportunity, of course, to walk through how to be a great board member. We're looking for your questions as well. I don't have to be the only kid in town asking questions, so we encourage you to include any questions. We're going to have time for that at the end of our time together today. But, you know, we're going to take the next half hour or so and sort of take a deep dive into working with boards. And we're going to have an opportunity to meet Katie. She's with Goodlawyer, and then have a chance as well to wrap up and take any final questions. So today we've got lots to get to. We're not going to waste one more second. We're going to dive right in. When we think about how to be a board member, I think I want to start at the very beginning. And Alex, I'm going to start with you. You know, if somebody has an interest in being a board member, what do you think? What's the best way to prepare them to even apply to be a board member?
I think the first thing is to just help them get an understanding of what it means, and that there are a lot of different ways to be a board member. I have brought some people onto boards that I'm on who had no experience with it, didn't know what it was like, and so you can offer people a chance to get in there, see what it's like, to, you know, just participate as a, you know, a member at large for a while, understand how the process works, and then get more deeply involved. I also know some people who have just dove in and took on enhanced roles, and you get to kind of choose your own adventure with it. You really just need to have a commitment to good governance and to the mission of the organization, and to, you know, to showing up and being there when you say that you'll be there. And beyond that, like Rena said, it's, you know, it's communication and transparency. We figure out what role everyone is going to play and what they're comfortable with, where their skills fit, and then you just go from there.
Oh, great. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great piece of it. And passion really has to be part of it as well. And, you know, being passionate about something and really carrying that passion, because I think a really important role for a board member is really being an ambassador for that organization as well. Chris, can you talk a little bit about that relationship? When we have board members, we don't want them to just get together with each other. We want them to spread the word in whatever community we're serving and beyond. Can you talk a little bit about that important ambassador role?
Yeah, for sure. So I've typically had about like 8 people on our board of directors, and they're often people who have different roles in the community. Many of them are sitting on boards for the organizations that are part of or members of our network. We run a network of environmental organizations, and lots of those organizations appoint board members to our board. So there really is already a huge community of environmental organizations here. So anyone that's going to be on our board, they want to be able to speak not just on behalf of their own organization, but on behalf of our whole network. So we really try to make sure that everyone sort of has an understanding of what the network really is and what we're trying to do. And, you know, the last 2 years, of course, has been COVID, so there hasn't been that many opportunities to be out in public at events being ambassadors, but people have been on lots of Zoom meetings too, and we have had people that are, you know, representing us at Zoom meetings around the country. So it's important.
Definitely an important role for sure. And I really hope today that we can take that word governance and put a positive twist on it, Rena, because I think governance has gotten a bit of a bad rap. Would you agree?
Yeah. And again, it's about clarity. And, you know, the best thing about governance is that it gives us a structure. And, you know, we have a structure that's written into the bylaws, into the way that we govern these meetings, these board meetings. There's a lot of history about how these things happen. I don't mean just at Wintergreen, I mean in general. And it's kind of like the building code. It's there to provide us and to make us safe, and sometimes to question. But it's not created by people who want to make our lives awful. It's there created to give us a process that we can agree to be a part of and help us move the whole mechanism forward through the people that are part of the board. So governance is not a bad word for me at all. And I've had a lot of experience in good governance situations, but that's been a shared understanding by the people that I've worked with.
Mhm. It's important that everyone's on the same page in that way, for sure. Absolutely.
And that's one of the things, I'm sure you're going to get to it, but that's one of the things that, you know, you can ask about when you're recruiting a new board member, is to get a sense of how they operate in a structure that has a structure that comes with it, and how they can both honor that organizational structure and find a way for their own voice to be heard, because we ask a multitude of people to take part in boards because we want diversity in those voices. So, you know, for me, the governance kind of keeps it structured in a way that everyone has a voice.
Absolutely. And how do we balance that, you know, Alex, when it comes to everybody having a voice and everybody, of course, thinking about the mandate of the organization and really ensuring that someone doesn't sort of overpower? I think we've all been in situations where you're part of a board or you're working with a board and there seems to be one or two voices that seem to be, you know, sort of on their own little path and not rowing with everyone else.
Yeah, I have been pretty fortunate that I have not generally been in that situation. I've definitely been on boards where you have someone who sees it as their role to question. And, you know, sometimes it can be frustrating when you're trying to move in a certain direction and someone is trying to pull back. But what I have learned is to recognize that the questioners play an important role in making sure that we're really thinking through what we're doing and that we're being responsible. We're not rushing into things. And I find it really helps to have a chair on the board who takes seriously their role as kind of the arbiter of that. Like, they're not there to necessarily push forward their agenda, but to be in an arbitrative or a mediative or a facilitative role, understanding where everyone is coming from and finding, you know, the fairest way to move forward. And actually, I mean, I can talk about this in more depth later, I guess, but that is why at one point I actually stepped down from a chair role, because I wanted to take more of a practical, on the ground position in an organization. And I realized there were certain conflicts between me taking that role and promoting projects versus being in that role where I had to mediate these differences of opinion between members of the board. So having someone who takes that role seriously, I think, is important.
And that's self-awareness, Alex. Honestly, I think that's so key, right? Because I think some people get to that chair position and they sort of think, well, there's the, you know, there's the golden egg, if you will, to be the chair. But is that what's right for the organization and for your own influence? Let's talk a little bit more about, you know, being the chair of a board. What do you think, just to kind of continue the conversation, Chris, what do you think makes a great chair?
Someone who has a lot of time, for one. Yeah, like, I don't know, before we had staff especially, it would often fall on me as chair to take care of a lot of tasks, just because I was the one who had the most time, and that's why I ended up taking the chair position in the first place. But in terms of actually operating, I mean, you have to be very resourceful. I had no experience coming into my role, so it was a steep learning curve. So if you have to be able to, you know, reach out to people when you don't know the answers to things, it was a big part of my job, for sure. And being very organized, certainly, like, you know, talking about however often you meet as a board. We meet once a month, but it's, you know, a very few hours to get ready for every meeting. You have to be able to, I always put together a document of everything that's to be updated on from the past month, so we don't have to worry about spending too much time talking about updates during the meeting. People can just read it. And structuring your agenda and having the objectives of, like, what decisions you need to make, and reviewing the minutes of the last meeting. So you have to have a lot of things organized. So I would say resourcefulness, time on your hands, organization, and then being a good communicator. Certainly, we talked about communication already tonight, but I'm sure it's going to be brought up again. If you can't mediate discussions that can sometimes have conflicts, and you can't communicate even more via email, if you're trying to get a lot of things done over email a lot of times. So verbal communication, written communication, there's a lot that goes into it, for sure.
Absolutely. That was summarized beautifully, Chris. Thank you for that. And, you know, Rena, when I think about the chair or any role on a board, and I don't know if it's just me, I'm always thinking succession planning, right? I'm always thinking, who's going to be coming in as new board members? We know board members leave for lots of different reasons. one, the end of a term or their second term, for instance, if you have that in your organization. They might be leaving for personal reasons. There might be a conflict of interest. Lots of reasons board members leave. And it's always important for us to be succession planning. How do you do that in your organization, Rena?
That's a really good question. For a long time, we were very bad at it. We had a fantastic board, so why mess with what's working? I think the first 5 years of our organization, there were no changes in the board membership and 0 changes. And when the first board member, for professional and personal reasons, indicated that she was going to step down, we were all, what do you mean? What didn't we sign up for life? We love this place. So we learned to do succession planning in a very personal and human way. We have a small board, it's 5, not 8, not 15, not 21, which means that we get to know one another. And you know, I know that one of our board members right now has 2 kids in elementary school, and her life will change when they're in high school. Or I know that one of our board members is in a senior administrative position in the day job, and he happens to be working in the health system. So COVID has influenced his ability to serve on the board. So, I mean, I think part of it is just paying super close attention to who is on your board and what's on the horizon for them in the years coming. And by the same token, looking in the rearview mirror to see who might be joining the organization. So we have discussions once a year about sort of a floating list of potential board members, so that we're not caught in a situation where, oh no, we need a board member, who are we going to get? And be in a scrambling mode as opposed to a thoughtful mode about balancing the members that are there.
It's so important just not to have that warm body, right, Rena? I mean, it has to be so much more than that.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think we've had a pretty spectacular run. We've been 15 years in, and our board is still fun. And I'm really bad at succession planning for myself. I'm still the chair, and I was 15 years ago. But it's an evolution. I don't think there's a single answer to succession planning, because the circumstances changed. COVID changed things for us as it did for everybody. We're certainly doing succession planning now for me, because I'm not going to be the board member or the board chair 15 years hence. So they're all different conversations. And I'm noticing in the chat that somebody's saying about the difficulty of getting board members and things like fundraising fatigue. The other thing we try to pay attention to in succession planning is what people are willing and able to do and what they're not. And honestly, nobody likes fundraising. So I try really hard not to place that expectation on the board, but to pick up Chris's point, you know, that's where you can have a staff position that takes some of the burden off. It doesn't mean it's 0 on the board, but paying attention to what the board wants to do and then supplementing with volunteer and staff, I think, is crucial. And you're not succession planning every year. You know, I guess I'm getting to a point here. It is nice to have board members stay for a full term.
Absolutely, absolutely. Dreamy when that happens, for sure. Let's talk about that important foundation document, that strategic plan. You know, boards come together to create these strategic plans. We know, Alex, and you know, we have to refresh them. We have to look at them, make sure we're still, you know, sort of going in that right direction. Any advice for us when it comes to our strategic plans?
So OEN is in the process of creating that, and I think the biggest challenge, especially if you are a smaller organization with no staff to support, you know, the operations, it can be a lot. And so to get people together, you know, running the organization, doing everything that needs to be done on a day-to-day basis, and also doing that process of strategic planning can be pretty overwhelming. And so I think the key piece of advice would be, oh, this is a good question, Sam. I think it's really to help keep people plugged into the why. Why are we here? Why did we make this commitment? And that's what we're always pushing towards. You know, be really easy to get shiny object syndrome, and this is what other people are doing, this is the trend. But why are we fundamentally here? What gives us the passion to keep going? And that's where we need to go.
I call that squirrel, going over here. You're like, no, come back. No, that's great. And I think that strategic plan, is so important. And, how do we keep people engaged, Chris? I think sometimes, maybe a board member has been there for a few years. You want to sort of ignite that passion again with them, and make sure that to the point earlier, that everyone's voice is being heard at the table. And, the group dynamics of a board is really interesting as well, to sort of watch, who sort of speaks a lot and who doesn't say a lot. But how do you keep the passion alive?
I think keep doing interesting things, for one. Like, I know that I still see excitement in board members that have been around for a few years, because we're making progress, and it's exciting, and we're always full of hope and optimism for what's coming next. So if you're getting into like a stagnation in your organization, that's probably a whole separate problem. Thankfully, we haven't had that problem yet. But you can, like, I wish I had the opportunity to do like in-person team building events and stuff like that. Hopefully we'll get back into that now with, post-COVID. Yeah, I want it to be fun, and to feel like you're part of a group of friends to an extent as well. It's not just we're all sitting around at a table once a month to make decisions, that we can all enjoy each other's company and get to know each other.
Yeah, like-minded people, right? Heading in the same direction. Absolutely. And, we talked about fundraising and my passion for fundraising, but not everybody, to your point, loves to fundraise, right? I think a lot of people sort of visualize it as, standing outside the LCBO with a can, right? But the reality is that when we can really embrace fundraising and inspire donors to come on that journey with us and actually make a difference. Like, I think fundraising in many ways gets a bit of a bad rap as well, because it becomes about the money. But what if we're actually giving a lot of joy to donors that want to give? So how do we inspire, Rena, how do we inspire board members that have an interest in fundraising to sort of take it to the next level, or, be engaged when we're talking about raising those crucial funds for our organizations?
A long time ago, I don't know, 30, 35 years ago, when I was in an admin position at our university, fundraising was in my portfolio. And at the time, there was this expression that you need to do friend raising before you do fundraising. And I don't know if that's still in the lingo, but okay. But it's something we talk about as a board quite often. And I find that people are way more willing to do friend raising. And once you engage with people outside of the organization, talk to them about what you're doing, invite them to events, share some small victory somewhere, talk about something that happened to a child who visited your center, whatever it is, and you pique the interest of someone else, and all of a sudden they sign up for the newsletter, and a year in they do a one-time donation, and 5 years in they become a monthly donor. And when you can watch that trajectory and call it friend raising and turn that relationship into something that generates funds, I think that's the most successful way I've engaged the board in fundraising myself. And I know there are many, many other ways, but I think casting a different light on it sometimes makes a difference.
Absolutely. And I think that messaging is really important. I'm really glad you mentioned that, because I think some of the board members that I've worked with over the years, some of the ones that would say they're not fundraisers are actually people that have introduced people with six-figure gifts, right? And you're like, wait a second, what do you mean you're not a fundraiser? But they don't want to use that term for themselves, and that's okay, right? It's okay to do that. Alex, when I think about, the time we've been through with COVID, and as we're starting to come out of COVID, fingers crossed, right? And we start to think about how we can engage our boards, and to Chris's point, that face-to-face, and maybe it's a tour, maybe it's sort of building that team again. What advice would you have for us as we're sort of working at that and bringing board members into the fold so that they can, be a part of it? Because I think sometimes this type of communication we're doing tonight can leave people feeling a bit isolated and not truly part of a group.
To be honest, Sam, I'm not sure if I'm the best person to ask this question, because almost every board I've been on has been, this is how we actually, COVID was an improvement because everyone learned how to use Zoom, and we got to move on from the conference call where, are you there? Did someone drop off? Is everybody here? Who's speaking? So Zoom, COVID has introduced a vast improvement to the way some of my boards operate because we can look each other in the eye now. But I think, whenever you have an opportunity, even if people live in different cities, if you have an opportunity to get together, hey, I'm going to be nearby you, let's get coffee. I think those face-to-face interactions make such a huge difference in building those relationships. And like Rena saying, relationships are really everything. So any opportunity you have to strengthen that is really valuable. And I think to go for it. One thing as we move out of COVID, hopefully, is people will be feeling different. I think, a lot of people have experienced burnout, have been dealing with, what is now called languishing, all these different feelings that have competed with our ability to show up as our best. And I think that might be an even bigger impact of where we are headed in a post-COVID world.
We have to do this every time. I'm with you on that, Alex. And Chris, how important do you think it is for board members to give of three things: time, talent, and treasure? We've had this conversation in the past. I think it's important to sort of revisit this once in a while. We think about boards giving of their time, of course, giving of their treasure, and giving of their talents.
Yeah, so for my board, I know I mostly ask for their time because I know like they're all managing families and jobs and other community roles as well. So if someone can give me the time of the month for a 2-hour board meeting and really engage in the conversation and really contribute to decisions being made and respond to emails, then that is enough for me. If they're bringing real experience to the table, if they've been around for a while. Typically, now that we have a strong board, I would only take somebody new if they really had a specific skill set that we need, or they're going to commit to taking on like a subcommittee or managing staff or something like that. In terms of treasure, it's not something I've really done a lot of, honestly. Probably should. It's really when we were desperate at points, then the board members stepped up and we really appreciated it. And their talent, we definitely have a mix of people in our board. We've talked a little bit tonight about diversity of opinions in board meetings, and I've gone into board meetings before where I was like, okay, I have this thing I'm going to propose and it's going to be great and we're going to move forward. And then we have a discussion. I'm like, oh my God, they were right. There was actually a better way to do this. So having just people with diverse backgrounds and experiences that know more than I do in different things, then that's all I really ask of my board.
And we're just going to finish up with one last question to Rena. Rena, when I think about the opportunity to really connect with the board and make sure that they feel at the end of their term or the end of their time with your organization that they've really met the objectives that they set out to do, how do you ensure as a board member that you're getting the most out of the experience as well? Because I think often we think about the organization's needs and we need you for CRA, check, right? We need you for audited financial statements and all that that fiduciary stuff. But how do we make sure it's a rewarding experience for the board member?
Same way we make sure that experiences for staff are rewarding. I think a question that we don't ask very often is, how are you hoping to develop through this position? What do you want to achieve by being a part of this? We sort of assume that they're doing it because they believe in the organization and they've got this little altruistic baby finger somewhere that they want to give to the community. But asking the question out loud, I have found, has yielded extraordinary answers that I don't expect. No matter who I ask, whether it's staff or volunteers or board members. So I think the fundamental thing is to ask and not assume. And then as the time goes on, try and nurture the opportunities that help them do whatever it is they thought mattered. And, as I said, if you ask the question, you may be surprised by the answers that you hear.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. We do have some questions from our audience as well, from our participants. Keep those questions coming. We do appreciate it very much. I'm going to make sure we get to all of them today. I'm just scrolling through, making sure I don't miss any. One of the questions, we sort of talked a little bit about this, but I'll sort of leave it open for whoever wants to answer. But, you know, sort of that quote unquote bad apples. I know, you know, when we deal with bad apples in any group setting, people are there for the power of really just maybe selfish reasons. How to sort of reduce the damage that they would do. Does anybody want to address this one? So no bad apples from all of you? Way to go. That's fantastic.
Radio silence.
Well, maybe I'll speak to that one because I've had some bad apples. And quite honestly, I had a really interesting situation a number of years ago, and it was a very difficult one. It was very much that this board member, it was actually the chair of the board, was bullying both my staff and myself. And so it became to the situation where we, you know, basically with my executive director had to sit down and say, you know, we wouldn't accept this kind of bullying. It was a youth organization. So we wouldn't accept this kind of bullying happening on our basketball court. Why is it acceptable here in our boardroom? So we had to kind of address it head on. And it was a challenging conversation, one that nobody wants to have. But it can be challenging. I don't have any wise words on sort of how to reduce the damage, other than the fact that, you know, in that case, it doesn't matter what the group dynamic is, bullying is bullying, right? So, but there is a different, you know, there can be a power dynamic, especially when it comes to fundraising with board members, right? It can be a situation where, you know, they may know all the, you know, the influential people in town and feel that they've got something sort of over the staff, which can be really unfortunate. So, so certainly in my case, we decided just to have a really honest conversation in a private setting with that board member, myself and the executive director. And we did see some improvements, but to be really honest with you, I ended up leaving after about 6 months, and so did most of my staff. And a part of it was just that relationship was really toxic. So, you know, when we think about volunteers coming in, we're so grateful. And to Chris's point, you know, accepting their time, accepting that those talents that they bring to the table, but it can't be at the cost of the mental health of the staff or other board members.
Yeah. I guess I was in a situation a while back where there was a board member on one of the boards I was on who had really difficult relationships and was kind of unpredictable in what behavior they would bring in any given setting, and so you never kind of knew what was going to happen. You know, if you showed up to a meeting or sent an email, and it was challenging. This person eventually ended up leaving, but you just had to be prepared, you know, to stand up for your fellow board members if things got a little ugly. And I don't think I never quite figured out, you know, what is the right way to respond to this. You just kind of do the best you can and be there for people who get in the way, who end up in the crossfire.
Absolutely. We've got another great question here. You know, a lot of people think, oh, I want to start a nonprofit, right? I want to start a nonprofit and I'm going to build this from the ground up. And it can be challenging to sort of find the right board. And then sometimes what happens is the founder is at the end of the day sort of excluded, right? We move on past what the founder has contributed. Does anybody have any wise words regarding those challenges?
Nope, but when Wintergreen kicks me out, you can ask me the question again.
Rena. I think this, you know, we have seen this, right? We've seen this where, you know, an organization is going somewhere and the founder maybe wants to take it somewhere else. And we do see this. So that's a great question. I don't have any wise words myself. I haven't experienced that, but I think it's an important one to definitely think about. We have a couple of other questions here I want to make sure we get to. When we think about the, you know, the opportunity for us to, you know, to really connect outside of board members, right? Or outside of board meetings, I should say. And sometimes it's great to have those social interactions. And I know that's been challenging, of course, during COVID. One of the pieces of advice that I always share is to get the spouses together, right? If there's partners, and have some sort of social group, because I think when you've got you've got somebody that's dedicating a lot of their time, bringing their spouse into the fold and having them meet everybody can also provide a very welcoming, opportunity for the spouses to get to know each other and for them to get to know the work a bit more that their spouse is dedicating so much time to. A great question here. What would you folks suggest? I'm reading this verbatim. What would you folks suggest a new board just building their capacity that doesn't yet have the experience to do to ensure the newly established organization is able to survive? A financial manager has been hired to do payroll and monthly statements, and the staff have some good experience, but how can the staff support the board and build capacity? Bylaw, writing policies, strategic planning, and all that good stuff. Chris, do you have any advice there?
Yeah, you definitely need all those things. We are still honestly building some of our policies on our board. We're inherited a lot of them from the organization has been around for 30 years, and we've just sort of been revitalizing it over the last 4 or so. So having staff who can, like, for our purpose, I guess it's different than the question being asked. We're having people going back and reviewing all these policies to see, like, how can we adapt them to the present day. But I'm sure there's lots of templates out there for other organizations who can lend what sort of policies they're using, and staff can definitely help sourcing that sort of stuff. Software has been huge for us. We have like a large membership, and everything was being run by spreadsheets, and we were having a lot of things done by mailing in membership forms and checks and stuff like that. So having software to automate as much of that as you can is huge. Sometimes it costs money, but there's a lot of free or reduced price softwares out there too. Like Google for Nonprofits has been awesome for us, having our own email domain for that for free, and having all the storage space that comes with that. Yeah, software has been huge. And in terms of strategic planning, I guess that's more of a board thing than staff. Yeah, I don't know. Any other thoughts?
Alex or Rena? I always like ensuring that we offer board training as well, which is an important piece.
Yeah, like a board handbook is certainly good. If you can have like a fixed document that you can all agree on for like what is expected of new board members, and deliver that.
A beautiful segue, Chris. We do have somebody asking, what should be in that new board member orientation? What can we do? I mean, some people are indicating here they're in a large geographical area, and that can be challenging for some. Anybody have any thoughts on what can be included in that orientation package to make it a welcoming environment for a new board member?
I'm looking at that question in the chat, and first of all, the board handbook is a fantastic thing to have, and not just to have, but to review regularly. Like a strategic plan, it should be a living document that you don't create and then put away somewhere and say, well, that's done, don't have to worry about that anymore. So there's some documents that you want to relive, reread, edit all the time. The handbook for volunteers, the handbook for new board members, the risk management document, the strategic plan, of course. So, and not only the handbook for board members, but the new board members should be familiar with those documents and the governance documents that we talked about at the very beginning. And that same person asked whether we would recommend individual orientation or always having everyone together. And my recommendation is yes and yes. Yeah. I think whatever way you can build relationships with your board members, do it. And Sam made a suggestion about involving other family members, and Chris has talked about time. So I think in some ways that's a limiting factor, but yeah, I think they're all right answers.
Absolutely. Fantastic information. Great questions from all of you. Thank you so much. I'd like to introduce Katie now. She's representing Goodlawyer, and we're going to have a minute of chat from Katie. Katie's all ready. I see her ready to go. We're going to be back with you in a minute. Spend some time with Katie.
All right. Thank you guys so much. first of all, thank you, Capacity Building Institute, for having us. It's been a pleasure partnering with you guys. And just along the same kind of lines, we really do love partnering with organizations that want to help their communities. And so, yeah, really happy to be here. Hannah, I don't know if I'm sharing the slides from my screen or if you are. So if you want to let me know, I can pop them up.
Yeah, you have screen sharing abilities.
Perfect. Okay. You know, I run webinars weekly, and you think that at this point, popping up the shared screen would be easy enough for me, but alas, here I am. So give me 1 second. Thanks for waiting, everyone. So yeah, like I said, my name's Katie, and I work for Goodlawyer as the social community manager. And so Goodlawyer is essentially a legal tech platform that is helping entrepreneurs, founders, and startups access legal help at a more affordable and trustworthy price. So we are something new, and I guess I'll open up the chat. So just curious here, who has had to deal with a lawyer in the past? You can drop in the chat, raise your hands, and the little emojis at the bottom. Just curious how many people have had to work with a lawyer here. Yeah. Okay. So a few people. We are quite different. We do not like being called a law firm. We are actually a startup that helps with specializing legal expertise for startup founders and entrepreneurs. So really what sets us apart from a traditional law firm is, yeah, exactly. They're expensive. And we are really built on the idea that legal help should be accessible to anyone. And so all of our prices are upfront. We do not have a billable hour. There's no big fancy retainers. Anything you see on our website, we have a pricing page, will be the price that you pay at the very end. So you never leave a session with our lawyers not sure what the bill is going to be coming back to you. And so essentially we built our platform because of this problem. Our founder, he actually used to work in a big law firm and was just recognizing that the people that were coming to him for help couldn't afford it. But also on the same note, there was a lot of lawyers out there wanting to help, but they couldn't access those people as well. And so that's where Goodlawyer really has kind of filled the niche, is that we are looking to help these unserved Canadians get legal expertise. And like I said, these lawyers, it's not out of anything other than they just don't have time. They are trying to do the marketing themselves. They are trying to do their accounting. They're trying to take in client intake and do customer service. And so that leaves them not as much time to actually do what they went to school to do, is to be a lawyer. And so that's kind of where Goodlawyer comes in. We take that off their plate. So when you work with a lawyer on our platform, they're able to give you 100% of their time because they're not having to deal with that extra tasks of running their firm. And so, yeah, we're making it much easier. So for the lawyers and for the founders, we are making it a lot more accessible, and more than anything, it's being able to access that help that you need right away. So we have some pretty great customer service. So if you contact us, we're able to really learn about your legal needs, and for the most part, pair you with a lawyer immediately when needed. And so a lot of people kind of wonder, like, how we're getting these lawyers and if they're trustworthy, and we actually make them go through quite a thorough vetting process. So if you're ever really curious about if this lawyer is qualified to help you, yes, they are. They go through a very extensive process with us. And so they are qualified to help you with any of your needs. And specifically for nonprofits, we do have lawyers who specialize in that. So if you're calling them, you're not going to get these answers of it depends. They know your industry, they know your business, and they can really lead you in the right directions. And just a couple of our services, if you guys are interested, those are ones we have on our website. However, if there was anything outside of that that you needed help with, we can develop custom packages for you at the same idea of having it being an upfront price. And so as a little thank you, I'll drop in the chat afterwards just a little bit of an offer. So if you guys are wanting to try Goodlawyer out for the first time, recommend you try out our legal advice sessions. They're 15 minutes with a lawyer. You can ask any questions, or you can take us up on our $50 contract reviews. As well as if you do sign up through the Capacity Building Institute, we'd love to give you $100 worth of Goodlawyer credits to check us out and see how it works for your business. And I will finish sharing my screen, I think. There you go. Yeah, if anyone has questions or anything, feel free to reach out to me in the chat, and I will also drop my contact information in there as well.
That's fantastic, Katie. Thank you so much for being part of tonight and the great presentation. We appreciate that very much. We have time for maybe one or two questions. We can make sure we maximize everything that we talked about today. We've got a couple of really great questions that have come in. Chris and Alex and Rena are back with us. This is a really great question. So what do you think of co-chairs, the pros and the cons? We'll start with you, Rena.
I've never tried it as a board chair. I've been a co-supervisor for doctoral students, and that's worked. So I really don't have the experience to answer that. But I think like anything else, your reason for wanting a co-chair is probably going to tell you whether it's going to work or not, and your relationship with that co-chair and setting up the parameters of how you're going to do the task together seems to me to be key.
Mm-hmm. I'm hearing that communication conversation we had earlier.
Yeah, that's all she says. That's right.
Yeah.
And I think also one of the dangers might be, and I take this from other supervision relationships, is duplicating the work. You know, you might end up doing more with two people than you do with a single chair, but again, it's communication.
Alex, Chris, any additions to that? We have a couple more questions, but anything else to add there?
Yeah, I've done the co-chair thing before, and it was the easiest my job has been, I think. I guess if you have the right person, especially if there's someone who if they complement each other in terms of different skill sets. So like I'm an engineer, and I had a co-chair who was someone who could run a fun strategic planning session, and I would have had no idea how to do that. So that was definitely very effective. I found that if you had someone who can bring different skills to the table and not just be a board member, but someone who's actually going to like take the initiative to like say, we're going to plan a strategic planning session and do it this way. And I think if you can find the right person and they're not just going to be two people who have the same skills and are trying to do the same things and are butting heads, then I think I would recommend it.
We've got another great question here, and it's, what do you think is the best form of communication with board members and perhaps organization members, supporters more generally? Any advice, Alex, for people that you know, are looking for those great forms of communication?
I mean, this is kind of a non-answer, but the best form of communication is the best one for the people involved. You know, what is their level of tech savviness? What kind of communication are they comfortable with? You know, some people really enjoy the in-person things. Some people don't have the, you know, just their schedule doesn't allow for it, or they have you know, like something that, you know, prevents them from getting out and doing that. Some people really like this, some people get anxious on Zoom. It really 100% depends on the preferences and the needs of the people involved. And so, like I said, that's kind of a non-answer, but
yeah, no,
that's what happens.
Anyone else have anything to add?
I think that's a great answer. I think you need to learn how people communicate and not fight it. So, you know, I'll say, don't bother sending that person an email. They don't read email. That person needs a text. That person needs a phone call. In the early days, I thought everybody was going to respond to email because I do. But, you know, that's not how it works. So the best form is the one that works. And I completely agree with what Alex said. And it's not a one-size-fits-all.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And building redundancy into the system is good too. Yeah. You know, sometimes people need to hear something or read something more than once.
Yes. Yeah, duplication is a pain, but it works.
Yeah. And I mean, I remember when I first discovered people don't read. Oh my God, people don't read. So I think you need to prepare for that too, and not in a way that you think you're going to change the world and they're going to start reading everything you send them, but a plan that engages them and doesn't frustrate you because you're not trying to turn them into something else.
Absolutely. We have lots of questions coming in. I'm just sensitive to the fact we're running out of time. I'm going to ask one question that we've had here for a little bit, and it's any advice when boards are cliquey, and make sure those new board members feel welcome. And the other sort of thing I'll overlay here is that somebody also asked, you know, is it great to have a board member that's been there for a while, sort of mentoring those new board members? So sort of two questions in there at one. Chris, do you have any thoughts on any of that?
It hasn't been an issue for me. Maybe our boards have been too small to really be able to form cliques, really. But I think having the in-person team building and getting people to talk to each other and get to know each other would definitely help with that, like any social situation. But I can't speak from experience on it.
Anybody else want to add anything?
Yeah, I can't say that any boards I've been on have been cliquey, but I know sometimes people coming in new might find it a bit challenging to integrate and to, you know, find their place. And so one thing that I do, and maybe it drives people nuts, I don't know, but I like to, you know, say, okay, here's this project. You know, you're new on the board. Would you like to partner with someone else and work on this? You know, this hiring process, this document that we need to put together. Would you like to work on it with so-and-so? And that offers some informal mentoring. It gives them a chance to connect with another member of the board and work together to, you know, towards a common goal, so that they feel more part of it. Maybe they wouldn't put their hand up on their own, but when it's offered to them, they seize on it and run with it.
That sounds great. Well, I really appreciate all of your time. I think we could go another hour, to be honest. We've got some great questions coming in, but this is why this is great. You know, we do this you know, bi-monthly. We walk through the opportunity to talk about how to be a board member, how to be an executive director. Today, I have learned a lot from all of you as usual. Rena Upitis, thank you so much for your time today. Alex Keenan and Chris White, a big thank you as well to Katie Knopf. She's from Goodlawyer. And of course, our fearless leader, Rob Barnes at Capacity Building Institute. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us tonight. We'll see you back next month. We're going to be talking about how to be an executive director. I'm Sam Laprade. It's been a pleasure to spend time with all of you tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
Thank you.